I rise to speak to the bill before the House, being the Superannuation Objective Bill 2023. And it's easy sometimes in this place to gloss over the actual wording of what we're seeking to pass and the consequences of that wording. And we'll often see, and it's no criticism of either side, a tit-for-tat about how what a particular party does in government is great and what a particular opposition is proposing is terrible. And we'll see a lot of that in amongst serious contributions which have occurred on this debate. So I'd like to take you, Deputy Speaker, to the actual words here. And in the bill, in Section 5, it actually has the nub of what we've been asked to consider, which is the objective of superannuation. And it says here in 5.1, the objective of superannuation is to preserve savings to deliver income for a dignified retirement, alongside government support in an equitable and sustainable way. For those listening or watching at home, Australia has long prided itself in a bipartisan way on our three pillars retirement system. What is the three pillars retirement system? It's as follows. Pillar 1 is a sustainable and equitable pension system for those that need it, an important safety net that we all pride ourselves on supporting in this nation. That's Pillar 1. Pillar 2 is a superannuation system, and that is what we're discussing here. How will the superannuation system be consistent with a purpose that we can agree on, and that is sustainable and equitable according to Section 5. But what this part in Section 5.1 lays out, it acknowledges those first two pillars. It says the objective is to preserve superannuation alongside government support, but it doesn't acknowledge the third pillar of a dignified retirement, which should have bipartisan support, which is the equity that people can save through their lives and draw upon. And there's no more important or substantial equity that people can save for and draw upon in a secure retirement in their own home. That the Australian dream means many different things to many different people. But most people, when they think of a life in retirement that is secure, that gives them comfort, their own home is high on that list. And that's not just an emotional bond. Your own home gives you financial security later in life. It's equity you can draw upon. It's the idea that you can go to sleep without another person who has an interest in your property telling you what you can do, whether you can stay there. And if for those who are just on their pension and do own their own home, the combination of those two are essential for a secure retirement. But if you look at Section 5.1 as drafted, it's a two-pillar retirement system. A two-pillar retirement system. Why is that? Why is it leaving that third part out? And that's really what this bill is designed to do. It's designed to strike a dagger in the heart of any idea that people can choose what to do with their own superannuation. And it's not, the Coalition isn't telling anyone what they have to do. We are merely saying that why can't people choose to decide where their money goes? Because that's what superannuation is. It's their money. It's not the government's money, it's their money. They worked hard for it, they earned it, and many have, with great flair and invective, criticised the previous government for the moment where people could draw down on super when they needed it most. Yeah, I was one of those people. I'll tell you why, because I was in one of those professions that was shut down. It was shut down. So instead of relying on government support, I drew on my own savings to keep a roof over our head, to provide for my children. And many people in small business, many people in professions where they didn't work for the government, they didn't work for a large corporation, they carried themselves. That's what got them through. And to stand over there and criticise that decision is the height of arrogance. It's the height of arrogance because what it's saying is that you know better. You know better. The government knows better than what people will do with their own money and their own choices that they make. But, Deputy Speaker, I want to come back to the actual wording here again and go to the second part. So there's a three-pillar system, and this talks about two, not three. But then it says, alongside government support in an equitable and sustainable way. Those words sound benign, and those words sound like something that reasonable people can agree on. Now, those words are either of consequence, meaning that they have power, or they are meaningless and they are redundant. Now, if we are using this purpose and this particular section just to give a motherhood statement that has no power, well, then we shouldn't be doing that. That's not what bills are for. But if it has real power, well, then what is that power? What is that consequence? And we should go to that, Deputy Speaker. We should go to that. So if you go to Section 5, Part 2, it says this. This section does not affect the operation of any law of the Commonwealth other than this Act or regulations made under this Act, or, in Part B, the operation of the governing rules of, and then it goes on, within the meaning of the Superannuation Industry Supervision Act. And then if you move to the explanatory memorandum, which is important to read alongside the actual bill, it says the following, Deputy Speaker. It says in section 171 on procedural matters, the statement of compatibility, which I just read out, will not be binding on any court or tribunal. Okay, that first sentence makes it appear like this is more motherhood than power. But then it says the following. This is not intended to exclude the operation of Section 15AB of the Acts Interpretations Act, which deals with the use of extrinsic materials, such as this explanatory memorandum, in the interpretation of an act or legislative instrument. So, the Acts Interpretation Act, which, again, for those who are listening and following at home, is an act that covers and flows through all of our legislation and assists courts and tribunals in interpreting many things, but one of them is resolving ambiguity. And as clever and as competent and professional as this place is, and the wonderful staff who help draft bills that become acts, there is ambiguity, and that's why we have courts. Courts help us resolve ambiguity. So in coming to these words, in an equitable and sustainable way, because those words mean many different things to many different people, there is necessarily ambiguity that will have to be resolved in potentially future court cases and of decisions made by the executive or matters appealed through other courts and through the tribunals that we have. And so, well, what's the point of that, Deputy Speaker? Why does that matter? Well, it matters because it goes to the real power that is contained within this bill. It's not just a statement of something that reasonable people can agree with on a superficial level. It has a consequence for the future parliament, future ministers, in acting in good faith on election promises or on commitments to resolve and improve superannuation. And the bill says that the minister, the relevant minister, will have to have a statement of compatibility. But when you look at the explanatory memorandum and you see that 15AB of the Acts Interpretations Act allows a court to consider the purpose to resolve ambiguity, that is of consequence. And the two words that are of consequence are an equitable and sustainable way. And I'd like to turn to the word equitable. And again, equitable means many different things to many different people and many political parties. I am proud of my political party's heritage on focusing on equality of opportunity. Those opposite, I'm sure, I don't want to speak for them, but I'm sure are proud of their party's commitment to equality of outcome. They're two different historical traditions of what equity means, but that's not resolved here. That's not resolved here at all. And so if you go to the explanatory memorandum on page 8 from 139, it says in 140, while equity is a subjective concept and it talks about it meaning different things to different people. And in 141, it notes differences in demographic factors and structural inequities. And then this sentence, this includes intergenerational inequity and outcomes for different groups, including women, First Nations Australians, vulnerable members and low-income earners. Now, of course, when you look at one version of equity, if you look at groups rather than individuals, those inequities exist. But what this bill does and what that section does with Section 15AB of the Acts Interpretation Act is risks ambiguity being resolved in a political way, but not by people in this place, not by ministers, but by those in the courts who will be asked to resolve hard, complex cases about what this particular provision means. And what does that have in common with the original criticism that I put, that this is a two-pillar retirement system, not a three-pillar retirement system? It is about trust in the people and then trust in the people that they send here to make decisions on their behalf. That's all it is. Do we trust our fellow Australians to make decisions on their own financial affairs, or don't we? And if we don't trust them, let's at least be honest about it. Let's be honest about the lack of trust in Australians making decisions for their own affairs. Deputy Speaker, both sides are proud of our superannuation system. Both sides. There is some tribal politics that has been used in the speeches here to claim that only one side of politics supports super. But the key difference is about trusting Australians to decide how their money is spent, and that is something that we should always turn our mind to and we should always defend. And that third pillar of a secure retirement and equity in your own home, that's a key part of the Australian dream. And right now that Australian dream is in trouble. It's in deep trouble. And all of us need to work so much harder to improve that. And one of those factors, and it's a complex issue, the housing crisis, but one of those factors is the proportionate number of migrants to the country. I am a proud migrant. My electorate is two-thirds first and second generation migrants. But it is migrants that are emailing me, calling my office, speaking to me on the doors, on the phones, and say it has to be proportionate. And for those, again, who would like to make political hay with that, if the number is right now, right, at 500,000 or 600,000, why didn't you say it was wrong when it was at 250? Why didn't you say it was wrong when it was at 125? Of course, supply and demand matter when it comes to housing, and at the moment there is a disproportionate number of migrants to this country. And the proportion that matters is that the capacity for us to build houses, the capacity for us to build infrastructure, schools, hospitals and preserve green space. All of the things that make our society one that is worth living in. And we need to make sure that that proportion is right. And right now it's out of whack. And that isn't just key for making sure that this is a society that people want to live in. It's also the social licence for our migrant system, which we all support. But the social licence comes with it being proportionate. And right now, the government needs to recognise that it is not proportionate, and we need to make sure that it matches the capacity for housing, infrastructure, schools, hospitals and green space. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.